Welcome to Mythic Slumber. Tonight we follow a trail of white mantles and red crosses into the mists of history. We're going to trace the path of the Knights Templar, not just as warriors of the desert, but as keepers of a secret so heavy it sank their fleet and vanished from the maps of men. Our story begins in the scorching heat of Jerusalem and ends in the cool, green silence of a legendary island. Did the Templars find the Holy Grail? And when their order was destroyed, did they carry it to the one place promised to heal all wounds? Close your eyes. Let the noise of the modern world fade into the sound of wind snapping against sails. Tonight, we sail with the Ghost Fleet to find out if the Sanctuary of Avalon was more than just a myth. If this kind of quiet storytelling helps your mind to rest, you can always come back to this channel. And, whenever you wish, you're welcome to gently like and subscribe so these tales are waiting for you whenever sleep feels far away. We begin where the light is brightest and the shadows are sharpest. Let the ceiling above you dissolve. You're no longer in the modern world. You're standing in the dust and the heat of the Holy Land in the year of our Lord 1119. The air here is heavy. It tastes of dry earth, of heated stone, and faintly of the resin from ancient cypress trees. It is a silence that rings in your ears, the kind of silence that falls over a landscape after a great storm has passed. And indeed, a storm has passed here. The first crusade is over. Jerusalem has been captured. The streets of the holy city, so recently running with blood, are now quiet, patrolled by men in mail and surcoats. But tonight, we are not looking at the great lords or the kings who sit on new thrones. We are looking for something smaller, something humbler. Shift your gaze to the road leading up to the palace of King Baldwin Sep. It is a dusty track, beaten hard by the hooves of horses and the sandals of thousands of pilgrims. Walking this road, or perhaps riding on weary, sweat-stained mounts, are 9 men. Just 9. They do not look like the legends you know. There are no flowing white mantles yet, no crimson crosses blazing on their chests. There is no gleam of polished plate armour or banners snapping in the wind. These men look like the wreckage of a war that everyone else is trying to forget. These men look like the wreckage of a war everyone is trying to forget. Their mail is rusted, their tunics mended by their own hands. They are veterans. They are tired. At their head rides Hugues de Payerne. He is a nobleman from the Champagne region of France. But here, titles mean little against the heat. He is a man of few words, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon, a habit learned from years of fearing what lies behind the next dune. Beside him is Godfrey de Saint-Thomé. They are not young, glory-seeking boys, they are veterans, they are tired. They have come to the king with a proposition that sounds, to any rational ear, like madness. The Kingdom of Jerusalem is a thin strip of Christian control in a vast hostile sea. The city walls are safe. Yes. Within the gates of Jerusalem bells ring, markets bustle, and the new Frankish lords hold court. But outside the walls the roads are a slaughterhouse. Pilgrims come from the mist-shrouded ports of England, from the green fields of France, from the snowy valleys of Germany. They land at the port of Jaffa, hearts filled with the burning desire to see the Holy Sepulchre. They walk the road to Jerusalem singing hymns, unarmed, carrying only their staffs and their faith. And they are dying in droves. Bandits, displaced warriors, and lions hunt them from the hills. Their bodies are left to rot by the roadside, unburied, their journey ending in terror rather than grace. These 9 men have seen the bodies, they have smelled the death on the road from Jaffa, and they have decided that it is not enough to pray. We follow them as they enter. The cool, shadowed hall of King Baldwin. The transition from the blinding noon sun to the stone interior takes a moment for the eyes to adjust. The air is cooler here, smelling of damp stone and rushes. The king sits, perhaps surrounded by advisors who wear silk and velvet, men who have begun to enjoy the spoils of conquest. When Hugues de Payan speaks, his voice is rough. He asks for permission to fight for those who cannot fight. He proposes an order of knights who are also monks. It is a contradiction that confuses the court. Monks pray, they do not spill blood. Knights fight, they do not live in poverty and chastity. The world is divided into those who pray, those who fight, and those who work. Hugues is proposing to shatter that division. He wants to be a militia of Christ, living by the strictest vows of the monastery, poverty, chastity, obedience, but serving God with a sword in hand. The advisors might whisper. They might look at the frayed hems of these 9 men's tunics and scoff. 9 men. What can 9 men do against the armies of the East? What can 9 men do to secure miles of treacherous road? But the king looks at them and sees what the courtiers do not. He sees iron. He sees a resolve that cannot be bought because these men have already given up the desire for wealth. He grants their request, and then he asks them a question that will define them forever. You are poor, Sir Hugues. You have renounced all property. How will you live? How will you equip yourselves? The answer is silence, then a gesture. Legend tells us that the knights were so poor that Hugues and Godfrey shared a single horse. Imagine that image for a moment. It is the image stamped onto their earlier seals. 2 men on 1 mount. It is a symbol of humility, yes, but also of a desperate brotherly efficiency. If 1 horse is all we have, then 1 horse will carry 2 of us. We are not 2 men anymore. We are 1 weapon, 1 will, 1 purpose. They call themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. They have no church. They have no monastery. They have no home. So King Baldwin does something extraordinary. He looks out the window of his palace, toward the southern end of the Temple Mount. There stands the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a vast structure built by the conquerors who came before, with its silver dome and wide aisles, and beneath it lie the vast arched stables and the ruins of what was once the most holy place on earth. You may lodge there, the king says, in the palace of the temple. The Temple of Solomon, a name that echoes through history. But what these 9 men do not yet know is that beneath their feet, sealed by centuries of dust and silence, lies the secret that will turn them into legend. Let us drift with them now as they leave the king's hall and walk toward their new home. The sun is setting over Jerusalem. The sky turns a bruised purple, then a deep, starry indigo. The heat of the day radiates up from the paving, stones, warming their feet through thin leather soles. They walk past the dome of the rock, its gold glowing in the twilight. They walk to the southern edge of the mount, to the structure that stands on top of the ancient retaining walls of Herod. This is not a cosy abbey in the French countryside. This is a fortress, a ruin, and a holy site all at once. They enter the Al-Aqsa. It is vast, empty, and echoes with their footsteps. They have no servants to light fires for them. They have no cooks to prepare a feast. They are 9 men in a hall built for thousands. They unroll their rough blankets on the stone floor. The smell here is distinct. It smells of old incense, of dry timber, and faintly of horses, for the vaults below have been used as stables. They sit in a circle, breaking hard bread and sharing water from a clay jug. The flickering light of a single tallow candle illuminates their faces. This is the birth of the Knights Templar, not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet, scratching poverty of 9 men eating dinner on the floor of a repurposed mosque. But as they eat, they can feel it. The ground beneath them is vibrating with history. They are sleeping on top of the Holy of Holies. They are sleeping directly above the ruins where the Ark of the Covenant once rested. They are the guardians of the Temple Mount. Think of the silence of that first night. The city of Jerusalem sleeps around them, a maze of narrow streets and locked gates. The wind howls softly through the arches of the mount. Hugues de Payan lies awake, staring up at the vaulted ceiling. He cannot know what he has started. He cannot know that these 9 men will grow into an army of thousands. He cannot know that the white mantle he will one day wear will become the most feared uniform in Christendom. He cannot know that they will become the bankers of kings, the owners of fleets, the masters of castles from Scotland to Portugal. And he certainly cannot know the fire that awaits him at the end, nearly 200 years from now. All he knows is the hard stone beneath his back, and the vow he has spoken, to protect, to serve, to own nothing but his sword and his faith. But there is something else in the darkness of the Temple Mount. As the candle burns low and the shadows stretch out like long grasping fingers, the silence feels expectant. The mosque they occupy sits upon layers of rubble. Below them are tunnels, sealed chambers, cisterns carved from the living rock thousands of years ago. The king gave them this place because he thought it was just a building. But the 9 knights are about to discover that it is a puzzle. They have time, they have silence, and they have nowhere else to go. Soon the pickaxes will come out. Soon the guarding of the roads will become secondary to the guarding of what lies beneath the floor. Sleep now, with the image of those 9 figures wrapped in rough wool, resting in the heart of the world. They are the poor knights, the humble soldiers, but they are sleeping on top of a secret that will burn its way through history. The sun has set on their first day, but the long, strange night of the Templars has just begun. Take a moment to notice the quiet stillness in the silence. If this gentle journey through history is helping your mind to rest, a soft like is the easiest way to support this calming sanctuary. The sun has risen and set many times over Jerusalem. By day the 9 knights are soldiers, patrolling the road to Jaffa, escorting pilgrims, chasing shadows in the hills. To the world outside they are the poor knights, a small peculiar band of pious men living in the ruins of a mosque. But the story of the Templars was not written in the sunlight. It was written in the dark. Let the heat of the day fade. Let the noise of the market and the bells of the Holy Sepulchre drift away into the cool blue silence of the night. We're going back to the Temple Mount, but we are not staying on the surface. Imagine you are standing in the vast echoing hall of the Al-Aqsa. The knights have finished their evening prayers. The candles have been snuffed out, leaving only the moonlight that spills through the high windows, cutting geometric shapes across the stone floor. Most of the men are sleeping, wrapped in their rough blankets. But not all of them. Listen closely, can you hear it? It is not the sound of prayer, it is not the sound of sleep. Clink, a pause. The heavy silence returns. Clink, scrape. It is the sound of metal striking stone. It is a rhythmic, muffled heartbeat coming from beneath the floor. Legend tells us that the 9 knights did not just live in the mosque. They lived above a labyrinth. The king had given them the Al-Aqsa, but beneath that structure lay the vast subterranean vaults known as Solomon's Stables. These were not stables in the way we think of a wooden barn. These were cathedrals of the underground, immense stone-arched chambers built by Herod the Great to support the massive weight of the temple platform above. Drift with me now. We're walking down a narrow, spiralling stone staircase at the edge of the hall. The air grows colder with every step. The smell changes. The scent of incense and hot dust is replaced by the smell of the earth itself, damp, ancient and heavy with the musk of centuries. You step out into the stables. The darkness here is absolute, broken only by the flickering light of a single lantern held by Hugues de Payan. The light dances wildly on the walls, revealing massive stone pillars that rise up into the gloom, like the trunks of petrified trees. The arches above are soaring and silent. It is a space built for giants. Why are they here? Why are they not sleeping? Because they found something. Perhaps it was a draught of air coming from a crack in the masonry, smelling of something older than the crusade. Perhaps it was a hollow sound when a spear butt struck a paving stone. Or perhaps, as the mystics say, they were guided by a map given to them by the Cistercian abbot, St. Bernard, or learned from the secret traditions of the East. Whatever the reason, the poor knights have become miners. Watch them now. They have stripped off their mail. Their tunics are stained with sweat and limestone dust. They are digging. This is not a frenzied search for gold coins. It is a precise, desperate excavation. They are looking for a door. They are looking for the past. The Temple Mount is like a book with its pages glued together, layer upon layer of history sealed in stone, and at the bottom, the first temple, the dwelling place of God. The knights work in shifts. One stands guard at the top of the stairs, watching for the king's patrols or curious priests. The others toil in the dark. They pry up heavy flagstones. They clear away rubble that has lain undisturbed since the Roman legions burned the city 1,000 years ago. Clink, scrape, heave. They break through into a lower chamber. The air that rushes out is stale and dry, preserved in the dark for a millennium. And in that moment, everything changes. What they are about to find will not just make them rich, it will make them untouchable, feared, and eventually hunted. They lower the lantern on a rope. What do they see? Imagine the shadows stretching and twisting as the light descends. They see walls carved from the living bedrock of Mount Moriah. They see cisterns, vast caverns designed to hold water for the ancient temple sacrifices, but they go deeper. For 9 years these men lived here. 9 years of digging while the world thought they were merely policing the roads. Historians have confirmed this. When modern archaeologists explored these tunnels in the 19th century, they found relics of the Templars, spurs, bits of swords, and a distinct Templar cross carved into the rock, marking their progress into the deep. But what did they find? This is the seed of the entire myth. This is the moment the timeline splits. Some say they found gold, but gold is simple. You spend it and it is gone. The Templars acquired something that lasted, something that could not be measured in coins. Drift deeper with me, into a small square chamber cut into the rock, sealed behind a false wall. The lantern light reveals not piles of coins, but jars. Tall clay jars sealed with wax, or perhaps a rotting wooden chest, bound in copper that has turned green with age. Inside there are scrolls, papyrus that crumbles at the touch, copper sheets etched with strange geometric ciphers. Imagine Hugues de Payon holding a scroll in his calloused, dirt-stained hands. He cannot read the ancient Hebrew or Aramaic, but he knows what it represents. Maybe it is the lineage of David. Maybe it's a secret genealogy that proves a dangerous truth about the bloodline of Christ. Maybe it is the blueprints of the temple itself, this sacred geometry that dictates how to build a structure that acts as a bridge between heaven and earth. This would explain why, when they returned to Europe, the Templars helped fund and design the Gothic cathedrals, Chartres, Amiens, buildings that defy gravity, filled with light and mathematics that no one had seen before. Or perhaps they found the ultimate relic, the Ark. Imagine the silence in the chamber as they brush the dust off a golden lid. 2 cherubim, wings touching, frozen in a timeless embrace, the object that can level mountains, the object that speaks with the voice of God. If they found it, they never spoke of it, not openly, but watch their eyes. When the knights emerge from the tunnels at dawn, climbing back up the spiral stairs into the Al-Aqsa, they are different men. Look at their faces in the grey morning light. The exhaustion is still there, but the uncertainty is gone. They are no longer just soldiers of the road. They are keepers. They have looked into the dark and seen the machinery of the divine. They possess a secret that makes kings seem small. King Baldwin thinks they are his charity case, living in his basement. He does not realize that the men in his basement now hold the leverage to buy his entire kingdom. They wash the limestone dust from their hands. They put on their mail. They kneel for morning mass, but their prayers have changed. They are not praying for protection anymore. They are praying for stewardship. They pack the findings, not in showy chests, but in simple saddlebags, or wrapped in bundles of wool that look like laundry. This excavation is the turning point. It is the moment the Templars cease to be a military unit and become an occult order. They have tapped into a root of power that goes back to the beginning of time, and soon they will leave. 9 years after they arrived, they will suddenly pack up. They will ride to the coast, not with just their one horse between two men, but with a train of mules. They will sail for Europe, and when they arrive, they will not bow and scrape for donations. They will walk into the Vatican and the courts of France with their heads high. They will demand recognition, and they will get it. The Pope will grant them immunity. Noblemen will shower them with land. The order will explode overnight. Why? Because of what was in the saddlebags. As we leave the tunnels of the Temple Mount, let the darkness close back over the secret. The clink, clink of the pickaxe fades. The false wall is sealed up again. The stables return to silence, but the echo remains. The Templars have dug up the past and they are bringing it to the future. They have found the Grail, whether it is a cup, a stone, or a bloodline, and they are now its sworn protectors. The dig is over. The rise of the white Mantles is about to begin. Open your eyes to the dim light of the Al-Aqsa one last time, and feel the weight of the secret they carry. It is a burden that will make them kings, and a burden that will eventually burn them at the stake. But for now, in the cool morning of Jerusalem, they are simply men who know something the rest of the world does not, and that is the most dangerous weapon of all. Allow your breath to settle, slow and steady, like the deep rhythm of the distant sea. If you find true comfort in these whispered histories, please consider subscribing. Your support helps guide more weary souls to this same place of profound rest. The dust of Jerusalem has been washed away. The secret tunnels beneath the Temple Mount are now a memory, sealed behind stone and silence. We are moving forward in time, and we are moving north. But the secret they carried would make them more dangerous than any army, more powerful than any king. Let your mind drift away from the blinding sun of the desert. Let the dry, golden heat be replaced by the cool, green breath of a forest in France. It is the year 1129. The air smells of rain, of deep loam, and of oak leaves turning in the wind. We're in the town of Troy. The narrow streets are crowded with bishops, cardinals, and lords. A great council is gathering, a meeting that will change the face of the world. Imagine standing inside the cathedral. It is cold here, a deep resonant cold that seeps into the bones. The stone is grey and unadorned, the architecture heavy and Romanesque, grounded and solid. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax candles and frankincense. In the centre of the nave stands Hugues de Payan. He is no longer the ragged soldier sharing a horse. He stands tall, and behind him, unseen but felt, is the weight of the secret he carried from Jerusalem. He has come to ask the church for official recognition. But he is not alone in this plea. He has a voice speaking for him, a voice more powerful than any king. The voice belongs to Bernard of Clairvaux. St. Bernard. Bernard is a mystic, a Cistercian abbot, a man whose words burn with a white-hot intensity. He is the nephew of one of the original 9 knights. He knows what they are, he knows what they found, and he has written a treatise for them, De Laude Novae Militia, in praise of the new knighthood. Listen to the scratch of the quill on parchment. It is the sound of history being rewritten. Bernard declares that these men are not mere killers. They are a new species of human being. They are not without monks nor without knights, he writes. They are lions in war and lambs in peace. At the Council of Troyes the Church bows its head. The Order of the Temple is granted its rule, a strict code of conduct based on the Cistercian way of life. They must wake at matins to pray. They must eat in silence. They must never touch a woman, not even to kiss their own mothers, and they are given a uniform. Focus your mind on this image. It is the most iconic image of the Middle Ages. A mantle, a heavy woolen cloak. It is pure white. In a world of muddy roads, of grey tunics, of rusted mail, the whiteness of the Templar mantle is shocking. It represents absolute purity. It represents the light of the resurrection. It represents a life washed clean of the sins of the world. When a knight puts on this mantle, he ceases to be an individual. He becomes a blank slate, a vessel for God's will, and later, a second symbol is added, a cross. Pope Eugenius III grants them the right to wear the croix patée, the red cross with flared ends, over their hearts, white for purity, red for martyrdom. Imagine riding down a country lane in 12th century France. You're a peasant, working the field, your back bent, your hands stained with soil. You hear the thunder of hooves, the ground shakes, you look up and you see them. A column of knights riding 2 by 2. They do not speak. The only sound is the jingling of harnesses and the heavy thud of horses' hooves. They sit upright in their saddles, motionless, disciplined. Their white mantles flow over the rumps of their horses. Their faces are hidden inside great helms or framed by severe beards. They pass you like a force of nature. They are terrifying. They are the militia of Christ. Visualize the contrast, the startling blood-red cross against the snowy white wool. It is a design of perfect, striking simplicity. When these men ride out, the world stops to watch. They are ghosts in the landscape, terrible and beautiful. And now the rise begins. It is not a slow climb. It is an explosion. When the knights return from the council, it is as if a dam has broken across Europe. The poor knights who once begged for bread are suddenly drowned in a flood of generosity that the world has never seen before. It is a mania, a fever of giving. From the mist-shrouded glens of Scotland to the sun-baked vineyards of Portugal, noblemen rush to donate to the order. Why? Because they are afraid. They are afraid for their souls. They believe that giving to the Templars is a direct line to heaven. A duke in Provence gives them 1,000 acres of prime farmland. A count in England gives them a watermill and the rights to all the fish in the river. A king in Spain gives them a castle on the frontier, and they give their sons. Young men, second sons of nobility who have no inheritance, flock to the white mantle. They leave behind their falcons, their silken tunics, and their sweethearts. They cut their hair short. They grow their beards long. They take the vow. The order grows from 9 men to hundreds, then thousands. Drift across the map of Europe now. Watch as the landscape changes. Everywhere you look, the Templars are building. Do you hear the sound of the hammers, the rhythmic clink, clink, clink of chisels on stone? It is the same sound we heard in the tunnels of Jerusalem, but now it is loud, open, and triumphant. They build preceptories. These are not just monasteries, they are fortified farms, recruitment centres and banks. They are self-contained worlds. Within the walls of a preceptory there are stables for the finest warhorses in Christendom, imported from Arab bloodlines. There are forges where armourers work day and night, tempering steel to a hardness that defies the sword. There are vast granaries, filled to the rafters with wheat and barley, and they build churches. But these are not ordinary churches. Look at the shape of them. Most churches in Europe are built in the shape of a cross, but the Templar churches are different. They are round. Visualize the Temple, church in London, or the Rotunda at Tomar in Portugal. They are circular, echoing the shape of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. They are stone circles, ancient and strange. When you stand in the centre of a round church, the acoustics are different. The chanting of the knights spirals upward, amplifying, creating a vortex of sound that feels like it is lifting the soul out of the body. This architecture is a clue. It hints at the secret knowledge they brought back, the sacred geometry, the understanding of how shape and proportion can alter the human mind. The rise of the Templars brings something new to Europe. Suddenly cathedrals begin to change, they reach higher, they fill with light, as if the knowledge from beneath the temple has taught them how to build doorways to heaven itself. Did the Templars bring the blueprints? Did the poor knights find the lost secrets of the masons in Solomon's stables? The stone rises, and so does their power. They become a state within a state. They answer to no king. They pay no taxes. They're immune to the laws of local lords. If a Templar commits a crime, he can only be judged by the Pope. They can cross borders without showing papers. They are the first true international corporation, the first standing army of Europe. To the peasant they look like angels of death. To the king watching from his castle window, they look like a threat. Because they are too perfect, they are too disciplined. In battle, they are forbidden to retreat. They must fight until the last man falls. If they are captured, they are forbidden to offer ransom. They are trained to die, and they are too rich. The donations never stop. The gold piles up in the vaults of the Paris Temple. The silver fills the chests in London. They own ships. They own ports. They own entire islands in the Mediterranean. But amidst all this glory, amidst the rising stone and the flowing gold, do not forget where they came from. Do not forget the digging. In the secret chapter meetings, held at midnight behind locked doors, the secret is still whispered. The initiates are told things that the Pope does not know. They are taught gestures, symbols, and rituals that seem strange to outsiders. Some say they worship a mysterious head. Some say they deny the cross during their initiation, spitting on it to show that their loyalty is to something older, something beyond the wooden symbol of the crucifixion. Is this heresy? Or is it a test? Or is it the truth they found in the dark? The rise of the white mantles is dazzling. It is a golden age. They are the masters of the world, the right hand of the church, the envy of every monarch. But as you drift through this vision of their power, the white flag snapping in the wind, the stone towers rising against the sky, the chanting that fills the round churches, Remember the nature of the sun. When it reaches its zenith, when it is highest and brightest, that is when the shadows begin to lengthen. The Templars have risen too high. They have become too separate. They are a kingdom of their own, woven through the kingdoms of men. And the kings of men are jealous gods. The seeds of their destruction are being sown right now in the very gold they are stacking in their vaults. They are becoming the bankers of the world. And as we'll see, it is dangerous to hold the purse strings of a king who has no money. The white mantles are spotless now. But the red cross on the breast is a prophecy. It is not just a symbol of the past. It is a promise of the blood that is yet to come. Let the image of the invincible knights fade. Let the chanting soften. We leave them at the height of their glory, masters of war and coin, unaware that the wheel of fortune is slowly, inexorably turning. They have built a fortress of stone and gold, but they have forgotten one thing. Even the strongest walls can be breached from the inside. Imagine you are a pilgrim, a wealthy merchant from York, or a minor baron from Normandy. You wish to go to Jerusalem to save your soul. You have sold your lands, gathered your rents, and you now possess a heavy leather sack filled with gold and silver coins. This is your life savings, but the road is a nightmare. To carry gold is to paint a target on your back. Every shadow in the forest holds a bandit. Every ship captain might be a pirate. You cannot sleep. You cannot rest. You are a walking treasury, terrified that a single knife in the dark will end your journey and your life. The Templars are about to solve this problem. They are about to invent something that, to the medieval mind, is little short of magic. This is the Paris Temple. Visualize it. It is a city within a city. High, crenellated walls loom over the narrow, muddy streets of medieval Paris. The Great Keep, the Grosse Tour, rises like a stone fist punching into the grey sky. It is thick, impenetrable, and imposing. People walk past its gates with a mixture of awe and fear. They lower their voices, because they know that inside those walls lies a power that can make or break kings. We pass through the heavy oak gates, nodding to the guards in their white mantles who stand like statues. We cross the courtyard, past the stables where the finest destriers snort in the cold air, and we enter the counting house. This is where the sword was traded for the ledger. This is where the poor fellow soldiers of Christ became the masters of the world. To understand their power, you must understand the fear of the road, but the road is a nightmare. To carry gold is to paint a target on your back. Every shadow in the forest holds a bandit. Every ship captain might be a pirate. Every corrupt toll collector is a thief. You cannot sleep. You cannot rest. You are a walking treasury, terrified that a single knife in the dark will end your journey and your life. The Templars solved this problem. They invented something that, to the medieval mind, was little short of magic. Watch the transaction now. It is a ritual of quiet efficiency. You walk into the London Temple, a round church echoing with chant. You are guided to a small, austere room. A Templar brother sits behind a heavy wooden table. He is not a warrior with a sword. He is a clerk with ink-stained fingers, but he wears the same white mantle with the red cross. You place your heavy sack of gold on the table. The weight of it thuds against the wood. The brother counts it. He weighs it. He checks the purity of the silver, and then he takes the gold. It disappears into a reinforced chest. In return, he does not give you weapons. He gives you a piece of parchment. On this slip of sheepskin he writes a message, but it is not a normal letter. It is written in a coded alphabet. a cipher known only to the Order. It uses geometric symbols based on the Templar cross. It looks like a spell. He hands it to you. "Carry this," he says. "It is worth nothing to a thief, but to us it is gold." You walk out of the temple. Your purse is light. You are free. You can sleep in a ditch or walk through a bandit-infested forest, and you have nothing to steal but your cloak. You are carrying a fortune in your pocket, invisible and weightless. Months later, you arrive in Jerusalem, or perhaps Acre. You are dusty, tired, and thirsty. You walk into the Templar preceptory in the Holy Land. You hand the crumpled, sweat-stained piece of parchment to another brother. He reads the code. He nods, and without a word he opens a chest and counts out the exact amount of gold you deposited in London, minus a small transaction fee. Watch the miracle unfold. This was the birth of something new. Wealth became invisible, and the Templars controlled the secret. But they did not stop at pilgrims. Let your mind drift back to the Gros Tour in Paris. We're going down now, descending the spiral stairs into the deepest vaults. Count the steps as you descend. 1, 2, 3. The torchlight flickers against the stone, casting shadows that dance like ghosts. The air grows colder with each step. You can hear the echo of your own breathing. Down, down, into the heart of the earth. The walls are slick with moisture. Somewhere in the darkness, water drips, a slow, rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of the fortress itself. The air here is cold and dry. There are no windows. The walls are 10 feet thick. This is the treasury of Europe. It is not just Templar gold that sits here. It is the wealth of nations. The kings of France and England do not trust their own castles. They do not trust their own guards. When a king goes to war, or when he fears a rebellion, he brings his crown jewels, his tax revenues, and his family's treasure to the Templars. Why? Because the Templars are the only ones who can protect it. They have the strongest castles. They have the most disciplined soldiers, and they have the threat of excommunication for anyone who dares to steal from them. The vaults are stacked with chests, rubies the size of pigeon eggs, gold chalices looted from Byzantium, bags of silver pennies collected from the wool trade. The Templars are no longer just guarding the roads, they are guarding the economy. And with this guardianship comes a terrifying leverage. Imagine a king, let us say King Philip of France, sitting in his palace. He wants to wage a war against Flanders, but wars are expensive. Soldiers need to be paid, horses need to be fed, the king's coffers are empty. So the king must walk to the temple. He must knock on the door. He must ask the Grand Master for a loan. The Grand Master is polite. He bows. He calls the king Your Majesty. But in that room, it is clear who holds the power. The monk tells the king what the interest rate will be. The monk decides if the war is a good investment. The Templars have become the bankers of God. They become the shadow empire, tax collectors for the Pope, guardians of fortunes, lenders to kings, and they are untouchable. Drift through the busy counting room of the Paris Temple again. Look at the faces of the clerks. They are calm, they are focused. They do not look like men who are afraid of anything. They know that the King of France owes them hundreds of thousands of livres. They know that the King of England has pawned the crown jewels to them. They know that without their gold, the armies of Christendom would grind to a halt. It is a heady, dangerous kind of power. They have stayed true to their vow of individual poverty. A Templar knight owns nothing. He does not have a purse of his own. His clothes belong to the Order. His horse belongs to the Order. Even his sword is on loan. But the Order itself, The order is richer than any emperor since Rome. This wealth allows them to function as a sovereign state. They have their own fleet of ships, galleys with the Red Cross on the sails, plying the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, carrying pilgrims, wool and bullion. They are the masters of logistics. But there is a subtle danger in the air of the counting house. Can you feel it? Gold has a smell. It smells of metal, yes, but also of envy. When you walk through the streets of Paris, you see the poverty. You see the beggars, the crippled soldiers, the struggling merchants. And then you look up at the towering walls of the temple, where the monks live in a fortress of stone and silver. People begin to whisper. They say the Templars have lost their way. They say they have become too proud. Pride goes before destruction, the proverb says. They whisper that the Templars are no longer the poor knights. They say that in their secret meetings they worship a golden calf. They say they have made pacts with the demons of finance to amass such unnatural wealth. And the king is watching from his palace across the city. King Philip IV. They call him the Fair because he is beautiful, like a marble statue. But he is also cold, and he is broke. He looks at the temple tower, and he does not see a holy order. He sees a debt that he can never repay. He sees a bank account that he wants to seize. The Templars, in their arrogance, feel safe. They believe they are protected by the Pope. They believe their walls are too thick, their swords too sharp, their financial web too complex for anyone to unravel. They are wrong. The quill pen scratching across the parchment is writing their doom. Every loan they grant, every chest of gold they store, is another link in the chain that will eventually drag them down. The bankers of God have forgotten that on this earth, Caesar also wants his due. As we leave the cold, secure vaults of the Paris temple, take one last look at the chests of gold. They gleam in the lantern light, promising security, promising power, but they are a trap. The knights have dug up the secrets of the past, and they have built the bank of the future. But they are about to face a very present darkness. The envy of a king is a fire that burns hotter than any forge, and soon the ledger will be balanced in blood. The silence of the counting house is about to be shattered. The scratching of the pen will stop, and the screaming will begin. We leave the counting house now. We leave the quiet, disciplined efficiency of the Templar clerks and their mountains of gold. We cross the river Seine, the dark artery that winds through the heart of medieval Paris. The water is black and cold, reflecting the torchlight of a city that is uneasy, hungry, and restless. We are heading to the Palace of the Louvre. Do not picture the grand, sprawling museum of today with its glass pyramid. Picture a fortress, dark stone, narrow windows, a moat filled with stagnant water. It is a place of shadows and draughts, of tapestries that flutter against damp walls. Inside, sitting on a high-backed wooden throne, is a man who looks like a carving brought to life. His name is Philip C., but his people call him Philippe le Bel, Philip the Fair. Look at him. He is startlingly beautiful. He has pale, flawless skin, hair the colour of spun gold, and eyes of a piercing, icy blue. He sits with a stillness that is unnerving. He rarely blinks. He rarely speaks. When he does, his voice is low, monotone, and utterly devoid of emotion. His enemies call him the Iron King. His bishop, a man who fears him, says, "He is not a man. He is a statue. He is an owl." An owl that watches, unmoving, before it swoops down to kill. Philip believes he is chosen by God to make France the greatest nation on earth. He believes the King of France is the highest power under heaven, higher than the Pope, higher than the Emperor. But the Iron King has a weakness, a crack in the marble. He is broke. France is bleeding money. Wars with England, campaigns in Flanders, the royal treasury is dry. Philip has taxed everyone. He has expelled the Jews and seized their property. He has debased the currency until the people mock him as the red-nosed king. There are riots in Paris. The people are shouting outside the palace walls. And where does the king turn in his desperation? He turns to the only people who have money, the Templars. He borrows, and he borrows again. The debt grows like a cancer. It reaches hundreds of thousands of livres. It becomes a sum so vast that it can never be repaid. The King of France, God's anointed, is living on the charity of monks. Imagine the humiliation. Philip sits in his cold palace, staring at his empty coffers, and from his window he can see the towers of the temple rising in the distance. He knows that inside those towers the vaults are full. He knows the Templars eat on silver plates while he eats on pewter. He knows they possess a state within his state, an army he cannot command, a fortune he cannot tax. This is the seed of the envy. It is a cold, hard knot in his chest. But the envy turns to hatred on a specific day. Drift back to the year 1306. The riots over the debased currency have turned violent. The mob is surging through the streets of Paris, carrying torches and pikes. They are hunting the king's advisors. They are marching on the Louvre. Philip, the Iron King, is forced to flee. He cannot defend his own palace. He gathers his family and his guards, and he runs. Where does he go? Where is the only place in Paris strong enough to keep a king safe? The temple. Imagine the scene. The King of France, breathless, humbled, knocking on the heavy oak gates of the Templar fortress. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, opens the gates. He bows low. He welcomes the king into the sanctuary. The gate slams shut, locking out the mob. The noise of the riot fades into a dull roar outside the massive walls. Inside it is peaceful. The gardens are trimmed. The nights are calm. The air smells of baking bread and roasting meat. For 3 days, King Philip lives as a guest in the temple. He walks the corridors. He sees the discipline. He sees the efficiency. And he sees the treasury. Perhaps the Grand Master, in a moment of foolish pride, showed the king the vaults. Perhaps Philip simply sensed it, feeling the magnetic pull of the gold beneath the floorboards. He senses the gold beneath his feet, the solution to all his problems, locked behind Templar walls. But he also sees something else. He sees that he is small. Here, inside these walls, Jacques de Molay is the true king. The Templars are the true power. They protect him. They feed him. They lend to him. He is their debtor. He is their pet. For a man like Philip, a man who believes he is absolute, this is intolerable. He eats at their table. He sleeps in their guest chamber. He is safe, yes, but he is also a prisoner of their charity. Every moment inside these walls is a reminder that he is not the master. He is the debtor. He does not show it. His face remains a mask of marble beauty. He thanks the Grand Master. He smiles his thin, statuesque smile. But as he leaves the temple when the riots die down, looking back at the gross tour, he has already made a decision. He will not pay the debt. He will erase the creditor. But how? You cannot just attack the Templars. They are the Pope's private army. To attack them is to attack God. They are heroes of the crusades. They are loved by the people for their charity. If you strike them with a sword, they will fight back, and they are better warriors than you. No, you must strike them with a lie. Enter Guillaume de Nogaret. Shift your gaze to the shadows behind the king's throne. There stands a man in black robes. He He is not a knight, he is not a priest, he is a lawyer. Nogaret is the keeper of the seals. He is a man of terrifying intellect and zero morality. His parents were burned as heretics by the church, and he holds a deep, cold grudge against the Pope and the clergy. He is the king's attack dog, Nogaret whispers in Philip's ear. Majesty, he murmurs, we cannot arrest them for being rich. That is not a crime. But what if they were not holy? What if they were heretics? The plan is hatched in the dark. It is a masterpiece of wickedness. They will not accuse the Templars of greed. That is too human. They will accuse them of things that make the soul recoil. They begin to gather rumours, the whispers of expelled knights, of madmen, of spies. They deny Christ, Nogaret writes on his parchment. They spit on the cross during their initiation. They worship a demon head called Baphomet. They engage in unnatural acts. They kiss each other's navels and spines. They are sodomites. These accusations are carefully chosen. They are designed to strip the Templars of their divine protection. If they are heretics, the Pope cannot defend them. If they are devil worshippers, the people will not rise up to save them. The king listens. He watches the spiderweb spin. He approves. It takes years to set the trap. It must be perfect. It must be a single crushing blow that strikes everywhere at once. Secret letters are written, sealed with the royal wax. To the seneschals and bailiffs of France, do not open until the dawn of Friday the 13th. The letters are sent out by couriers, riding fast horses to every corner of the kingdom, to Normandy, to Gascony, to Provence. The instructions are precise. Every Templar in France is to be arrested at the same hour. Their property is to be seized. Their archives are to be confiscated. And the Templars, the keepers of the secret, they do not see it coming. They are blinded by their own arrogance. Jacques de Molay, the aging Grand Master, is busy debating a new crusade with the Pope. He trusts the king. He is the godfather to one of the king's children. He believes the white Mantles are invincible. He does not realize that the marble statue in the Louvre has been watching him for years, counting every coin, nursing every slight, feeding the cold fire of envy. The sun begins to set on October 12, 1307. The harvest moon rises over Paris. The city is quiet. The temple is locked up for the night. The knights go to their beds, saying their prayers, dreaming of Jerusalem. In the Louvre, King Philip stands by the window. He looks out at the city. He does not sleep. He waits. He is about to commit the greatest heist in history. He is about to murder an order that has stood for 2 centuries. He's about to unleash a horror that will echo down the ages. But he feels no guilt. He feels only the cold, hard satisfaction of a checkmate. The statue is about to move. The owl is about to swoop. The envy of the king has become the judgment of the state. And when the sun rises tomorrow, the world of the Templars will be gone. The night of October 12th, 1307 is long and unseasonably cold. A heavy mist curls off the river Seine, wrapping the streets of Paris in a shroud of grey dampness. If you were walking the cobblestones that night, you would hear nothing but the barking of a stray dog or the distant chant of Compline from a monastery. The temple fortress looms in the dark, a mountain of black stone against a black sky. Inside, the knights are sleeping. Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master, rests in his quarters. He is an old man now, stiff in the joints, weary from decades of service. He sleeps the deep sleep of the righteous, believing his order is eternal, believing his king is his friend, believing that the sun will rise tomorrow just as it always has. But the sun that rises on Friday the 13th does not bring light. It brings iron. The operation is a masterpiece of treachery. It is the first police state raid in history, coordinated with a precision that would terrify a modern general. At the exact same hour, as the first grey light of dawn touches the church spires, thousands of royal guards across France break the wax seals on their secret orders. They read the command of King Philip. The Templars are wolves in sheep's clothing. Seize them. Imagine the sound shattering the silence of the Paris temple. Crash. The heavy oak doors, which have withstood the armies of Saladin, are smashed open by the battering rams of the King of France. The scene is one of utter chaotic shock. Knights are dragged from their beds in their linens, their eyes wide with confusion. They reach for swords that are not there. They shout for their brothers, but their brothers are already in chains. There is no great battle. There is no heroic last stand. The surprise is too total. The lions of war are captured like sheep in a pen. You watch as they are hauled out into the courtyard. The morning air is freezing. The knights shiver, not just from the cold, but from the impossibility of what is happening. These are men who answer only to the Pope. They are untouchable. And yet, here are the king's men, spitting on the white mantles, tearing the red crosses from their chests. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, is led out in irons. He looks at the royal officers, and he sees the betrayal in their eyes. He realizes in one terrible moment that the safety of the temple was an illusion. The envy of the king has finally struck. This day, Friday the 13th, will sear itself into the human consciousness. For 700 years, men will call this date unlucky. They will fear it without knowing why. But you know why. It is the day the world turned upside down. It is the day the guardians were stripped of their power and the darkness rushed in. The years that follow are a blur of dungeons and agony. Knights confess to things they never did, just to stop the pain. 7 years pass in darkness. We move now to the final act. It is the evening of March 18th, 1314. The setting is the Île des Juifs, the island of the Jews, a small strip of land in the Seine near the gardens of the royal palace. The sun is setting, painting the river in hues of violent orange and bruised purple. A crowd has gathered. Thousands of Parisians line the banks, watching in a hushed, terrified silence. They have come to see the end of an age. In the centre of the island, a pyre has been built. It is a tower of wood, brush and charcoal. A stake stands in the middle, dark and grim. 2 men are brought forward. One is Geoffroy de Charnay, the preceptor of Normandy. The other is Jacques de Molay. The Grand Master is now in his 70s. His hair and beard are long and white, matted from years in a dungeon. His body is broken by torture. He is a shell of a man. The king's herald reads the charges one last time. Heretic, idolater, sodomite. He offers them life. All they have to do is confess again. All they have to do is say the order was evil and they can live out their days in a monastery. But something happens as the old man looks at the wood. Perhaps it is the smell of the river, reminding him of the Jordan. Perhaps it is the sight of the Notre Dame Cathedral in the distance, reminding him of the temple. Jacques de Molay straightens his back. The trembling stops. The old warrior returns. He speaks, and his voice carries across the water, clear and defiant. "I confess," he shouts, shocking the crowd. "I confess that I am guilty of the greatest crime, but my crime is not heresy. My crime is that I lied. I lied to save my own life. The order is pure, the order is holy, and I will not slander it any more." A gasp runs through the crowd. He has sealed his fate. King Philip, watching from his palace window, gives the signal. The executioners step forward. They tie the old man to the stake. They do not strangle him first, as was the mercy of the time. They want him to suffer. They light the fire from the bottom so it will burn slowly. The smoke begins to curl upward. The orange flames lick at his feet. The heat distorts the air, making the world look like a mirage. The pain is unimaginable, but Malay does not scream for mercy. He prays. And then, as the fire climbs higher, consuming his white beard, consuming the last of the Templar Grand Masters, he opens his eyes one last time. He does not look at the crowd. He looks directly at the royal palace. He looks directly at Rome. He takes a breath of smoke and fire and he unleashes the curse. His voice is a roar cutting through the crackle of the flames. "Pope Clement, King Philip, Knights Guillaume de Nogre, I summon you." The crowd freezes. The wind seems to stop. "I summon you to appear before the tribunal of God before the year is over. You have judged the innocent, and now God will judge you. Accursed! You are all accursed until the 13th generation of your lines." The fire roars up, swallowing his face. The Grand Master dies not as a victim, but as a judge. The ashes of Jacques de Molay drift into the Seine. The crowd disperses, crossing themselves, terrified by the words they have heard. King Philip, the Iron King, turns away from his window. He tells himself it is just the raving of a dying man. He has won. The Templars are gone. The debt is erased. But the calendar begins to turn. 1 month later, Pope Clement V dies in agony. Lightning strikes the church during his funeral, burning his corpse to ash. The king feels the chill of the curse. By November, Philip IV is thrown from his horse in the forest. He lingers for weeks, staring at shadows that take the shape of a burning man. 7 months after the curse, the Iron King dies. The Capetian dynasty, which had ruled France for centuries, begins to collapse. His sons die one by one, leaving no heirs. Within a few short years, the royal line is extinguished. The accursed kings drag France into the 100 Years' War, a century of misery and blood. The dawn raid of Friday the 13th was successful. The Templars were broken, but the fire of the Grand Master burned longer than the wood of the pyre. As night falls over the Ile des Juifs, the river flows on, black and silent. The Order is officially dead. But is it? Because while the Grand Master burned in Paris, and while the knights rotted in dungeons, not everyone was captured. Remember the coast. Remember the ships. While the king was counting his stolen gold, and while the smoke of the execution drifted over Paris, 18 galleys were already far out to sea, disappearing into the Atlantic mist. They carried no lights. They answered no signals. The head was cut off, but the body and the secret had already escaped. The curse destroyed the king, but it bought time for the fleet. And now, the true journey begins. Away from the fire, away from the betrayal, and toward the green silence of the west. Toward Avalon. While the fires were being lit in Paris, and the iron shackles were being forged for the Grand Master, we must turn our eyes away from the centre of France. We must travel west, racing the royal couriers to the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. The date is late October, 1307. The location is the fortified port of La Rochelle. This is the stronghold of the Templar navy. Here, the air does not smell of charcoal and betrayal. It smells of brine, tar, and the wild, wet wind blowing in from the open sea. La Rochelle is a city of stone towers and grey water, a place where the Order is not a bank but a naval power. History records a testimony that haunts this night. A witness named Jean de Charlon would later swear to the Pope that on the evening before the arrests, he saw a flurry of activity on the docks that defied explanation. Visualize the scene. The sun has set, leaving a bruised purple horizon. The harbour is usually quiet at this hour, but tonight it is alive with a silent, frantic energy. Torches sputter in the damp wind, casting long, dancing shadows against the hulls of the ships. There are 18 galleys moored here. These are not clumsy merchant cogs. They are weapons of war. They are sleek, low-slung vessels with banks of oars and lateen sails designed to cut through the Mediterranean waves. But tonight, they are being prepared for a journey far darker and colder than a cruise to Cyprus. Watch the knights and the sergeants. They are moving heavy chests. Thud, thud. The chests are carried up the gangplanks with difficulty. They are bound in iron and copper. Are they filled with gold? Perhaps. The Templars were the bankers of the world after all, but gold can be replaced. Some chests are handled with even greater care, as if they contain something fragile. Scrolls, maps, relics dug from the tunnels beneath Jerusalem, the skull of a saint, or perhaps the genealogy of a bloodline that Philip of France would kill to suppress. The loading is done in silence. There are no shouted orders, only the creak of rope and the slap of water against wood. These men know the net is closing. They have received the secret warning that Jacques de Molay missed. As the church bells in the town ring midnight, the order is given. Cast off. One by one, the 18 galleys slip their moorings. The oars dip into the black water. Splash, pull, splash, pull. The rhythm is steady, a heartbeat of survival. They glide past the harbour chains, past the stone watchtowers, and out into the open bay. By the time the King Seneschal arrives at dawn with his warrant for arrest, the docks are empty. The seagulls cry over a vacant harbour. The greatest fleet in Christendom has simply evaporated. They're gone, and with them, the true treasure of the temple. Now, we move with them into the grey unknown. We are aboard the lead galley. The coast of France is a fading line of grey on the horizon, and then it is gone. There is only the Atlantic. For a knight accustomed to the dry heat of Palestine or the stone cloisters of Paris, this is an alien world. The Atlantic in late autumn is a beast. The waves here are not the choppy blue hills of the Mediterranean. They are mountains of slate-grey water, rolling in from thousands of miles of emptiness. The ships pitch and roll violently. The knights, men who can ride a charger into a wall of spears without flinching, are forced to cling to the rigging, sick and freezing. Their white mantles are soaked with freezing spray, turning heavy and grey. The red crosses on their chests are darkened by the salt water. They're no longer soldiers of the Pope. They are outlaws. In the captain's quarters of the lead ship, a map is spread out on a table, pinned down by daggers to keep it from sliding. The commander looks at it by the light of a swinging lantern. Where do you go when the world has turned against you? You cannot go south. Spain and Portugal are too close to the Pope's reach. You cannot go east. The Mediterranean is a Roman lake. You must go north, and you must go west. The fleet stays together, a chain of 18 ghosts moving through the mist. They sail at night, navigating by the stars, the pole star, the guide of the exile. By day they lower their sails and drift, terrified of being spotted by royal patrols or merchant vessels that might carry news of their location back to France. It is during this voyage, in the terrifying isolation of the ocean, that the transformation begins. They strip off the white mantles. The fabric is too conspicuous, too tied to the life they are leaving. They need a new symbol. Legend whispers that this is where the Jolly Roger was born. They strip the white crosses from their mantles and raise a new flag, the skull and crossbones, the skull of Sidon, symbol of resurrection. Now it means something darker. We are dead to the world. Do not cross us. Days turn into weeks. The water runs low. The bread turns to hardtack. The cold gnaws at their fingers. They are sailing off the edge of the known map into the Mare Tenebrosum, the Sea of Darkness. And then the call comes from the lookout. Land. Not the sunny cliffs of the south, but a rugged, jagged coastline shrouded in mist. Cliffs of granite rising out of a churning grey sea. Green, mossy slopes disappearing into low-hanging clouds. Is it Ireland? Is it the Western Isles of Scotland? The fleet navigates the treacherous currents. This is a coast of shipwrecks, a place where only the skilled or the blessed survive. They find a hidden inlet, a deep fjord carved by ancient glaciers. The water here is calm, black, and silent as a mirror. The galleys glide in. The oars are shipped. The anchors splash down, breaking the silence of centuries. The knights stand on the deck and look at their new home. It is a place of primal, ancient beauty. The hills are vividly, shockingly green. A deep, wet emerald colour that speaks of endless rain and deep roots. The forests are thick with oak and a pine, ancient trees that were standing when Rome fell. This is sanctuary. They lower the boats. They row to the shore. As their boots crunch onto the pebble beach, the transition is complete. They have stepped out of history and into myth. They unload the chests. The heavy iron boxes are carried up the beach and into the cover of the trees. The ships, the beautiful galleys that carried them to safety, are stripped of their rigging. Some may be burned to prevent discovery. Others are hidden in sea caves, their masts lowered, sleeping until the day they are needed again. The knights move inland, and as they enter the forest, they change. They are in a land that does not care about the Pope. This is the edge of Christendom, where the old gods still sleep in the standing stones and the fairy mounds. To survive here, they cannot be the arrogant bankers of Paris. They must become part of the landscape. They trade their mail for leather. They trade their white wool for the green and brown of the woods. They grow their hair long and wild. They become the green men. If you look at the carvings in the chapels they would later build, you see this face. A man's face surrounded by leaves, vines growing from his mouth. It is the symbol of rebirth. The Templar is dead. The guardian of the wild is born. They find local lords who are sympathetic. In Scotland, King Robert the Bruce is also an excommunicated outlaw, fighting for his life against England. He does not care about the Pope's decree. He needs swords. He needs heavy cavalry. He needs men who know how to build castles that cannot be taken. And so, a quiet deal is struck in the mists. The Templars disappear. They melt into the clans. A Campbell here, a Sinclair there. They teach the Scots how to fight in formation. They teach them how to build better fortifications, but they keep their circle closed. Deep in the woods of Argyll, or perhaps in a hidden valley near Rosslyn, they establish a new temple. It is not a fortress of stone walls like Paris. It is a fortress of secrecy. They dig again. Just as they dug in Jerusalem, they dig into the soft, wet earth of the north. They build vaults beneath the roots of the ancient oaks, and there, in the silence of the green hills, they place the chests, the secrets of Solomon. the maps of the world, the wealth of the Order. It is said that the local people knew they were there but said nothing. They saw the tall, bearded strangers walking in the woods, men who spoke French and Latin, men who moved with the grace of trained killers but lived with the quiet of monks. They called them the Cide, or the foreigners, or simply the guardians. The King of France thinks they are dead. The Pope thinks they are destroyed. But in the cool, rain-washed air of the north, the Order is breathing. It has shed its skin. It has returned to the earth. The lost Isle of Avalon is not a magical dimension. It is this. It is the sanctuary where the dying king, the dying Order, is brought to be healed. It is the hidden valley where the sword Excalibur is kept safe until the day it can be drawn again. Night falls over the encampment. The fires are small and smokeless. The knights sit on logs covered in moss. They are thousands of miles from Jerusalem. They have lost their power, their lands, and their name. But as they look at the chests resting in the centre of the camp, they know they have won the only victory that matters. They have survived. The mist rolls in from the Atlantic, thick and white, blanketing the forest. By morning, if a royal spy were to come looking, he would see nothing but trees and mist. The fleet is gone. The knights are gone. Only the legend remains, whispering in the wind through the pines, promising that something lies hidden beneath the green hills of the west. Something waiting to wake up. The fires of the persecution have long since burned out. The shouting of the French king's heralds has faded into the silence of history. We are moving forward now, drifting through the mists of time, from the desperate beach landings of the 14th century to the mid-15th century. We're in the deep wooded glen of Rosslyn, just a few miles south of Edinburgh. The location is significant. It is hidden. If you stand on the ridge above, you look down into a valley filled with ancient trees, oaks, yews and chestnuts, where the North Esk River carves a winding path through the sandstone. It is a place of shadows and secrets, a natural cathedral of leaves long before a single stone was laid. Here, in the year 1446, the digging begins again. But this time it is not a secret excavation in the dark. It is the beginning of a masterpiece. The man overseeing the work is William St. Clair, the Prince of Orkney. He is a giant of a man, a powerful noble of the Scottish court, but look closer at his lineage. The St. Clairs, the Sinclairs, were the family who, according to legend, welcomed the fleeing Templar refugees a century earlier. They are the keepers who took the green men of the forest and gave them a home. William does not want to build a simple parish church. He wants to build a library. But in this age, you do not write secrets on parchment, for parchment burns. You write them in stone. He summons masons from all over Europe. They come from France, from Spain, from the guilds that built the great Gothic cathedrals. They are given housing, high wages and protection. A town springs up around the construction site. A town of dust, chisels and whispers. Imagine standing in the centre of the chapel as it rises. The air is thick with the white dust of sandstone. The sound is a rhythmic, hypnotic clink, clink, clink. The same heartbeat we heard in Jerusalem and Paris, but now it is creating something wildly different. Rosslyn Chapel is not like other churches. It is small, but the density of the carving is overwhelming. Every inch of stone is covered. There is not a single plain surface. It is a riot of symbols, a tangled forest of stone that seems to be growing before your eyes. Look at the walls. You see the Christian saints, yes, but look closer. Peering out from the foliage surrounding the windows, hidden in the arches, are faces. Strange, pagan faces, men with leaves sprouting from their mouths, vines growing from their eyes, the green men. There are more than 100 green men carved into Rosslyn. Why would a Christian chapel be guarded by these ancient spirits of the wood? It is the signature of the survivors. It is the memory of the knights who stripped off their white mantles and disappeared into the Scottish forests, becoming one with the land. The green man is the symbol of resurrection, the force that dies in winter and is born again in spring. It is the perfect disguise for a dissolved order waiting for its time to return. And there are other things here, things that should not exist. Look at the plants carved near the windows: maize, aloe. Plants from a world that will not be discovered for 50 more years. The stone whispers of voyages that history has forgotten. But the heart of the mystery lies in the apprentice pillar. Walk with me to the east end of the chapel. There stand 3 pillars. 2 are plain, elegant, unremarkable. But the third is a miracle. Ribbons of stone wind around the shaft like rising smoke, or like the helix of DNA. It is breathtakingly delicate. The legend of this pillar tells a dark story. It is said the master mason received the design for this pillar from a dream, or perhaps from a secret drawing brought from the east. But he could not figure out how to carve it. He told Sir William he needed to travel to Rome to study the original pillars there. While the master was gone, his apprentice, a young boy, had a dream. He saw the finished pillar. He saw how the stone needed to be cut. Driven by a strange inspiration, the boy set to work. He worked day and night, the chisel moving as if guided by an unseen hand. When the master mason returned from Rome, he walked into the chapel and saw the pillar. It was finished. It was perfect. It was more beautiful than anything the master could have created. In a fit of jealous rage, or perhaps fear that the boy knew a secret he shouldn't, the master struck the apprentice with a heavy mallet, killing him instantly. It is a tragedy, but to the initiated, it is a code. It echoes the Masonic legend of Hiram Abiff, the builder of Solomon's Temple, who was murdered for refusing to reveal the master's word. Rosslyn is not just a church, it is a temple of initiation. The stone tells the story of the secret that kills. As the years pass, the roof is finished, a barrel vault covered in stars and roses. Rosslyn, the line of the rose, or perhaps the Roslyn, the head of the waterfall. The chapel is completed, but it feels unfinished. It looks like the choir of a much larger cathedral that was never built. Or perhaps it was meant to look like a ruin from the start, a romantic folly to hide its true purpose. And what is that purpose? Look down. Beneath our feet lies the crypt. The St. Clairs are buried here in full armour, standing, ready to draw their swords. But there is a deeper vault, a vault that has never been opened. The timeline fits perfectly. The treasure vanishes in 1307. A century later, a stone strongbox is built to hold it forever. William St. Clair built the vault, covered it in symbols only the initiated could read, and stopped. The construction of Rosslyn was an act of preservation. It was the Templars saying, "We are still here. We have changed our name. We have changed our clothes. But we have written our truth in stone, and stone does not lie." As you stand in the dim, coloured light of the chapel, listening to the wind in the glen outside, you can feel the weight of it. The chapel feels like a machine that has been turned off, waiting for the right key to start it up again. The green men stare down from the walls with their leafy eyes. They are watching, they are guarding, The chapel is built, the vault is sealed, the secret is safe, and now the legend can merge with the land itself. The stone and the story become one. The Templars have built their Jerusalem in Scotland, their own Avalon of sandstone and shadow, and there it stands, waiting for the day when the sleeping knights are called to wake. The fires of Paris are behind us now. The glow of the burning stake on the Ile de la Cité has faded into memory. La Rochelle is silent. The harbour chains have fallen still. The French patrols search an empty sea and find nothing. But out beyond the reach of their torches, the fleet is moving. Drift with me now, out past the breakwaters of La Rochelle. The night is cold, the water black as ink. 18 galleys slip through the waves, their sails furled, moving only by the quiet pull of oars. Listen, splash, pull. The rhythm is soft, measured, designed to leave no trace of panic on the water. On each ship, lanterns are hooded. The white mantles with red crosses are gone. The knights wear plain cloaks now, the colours of merchants and sailors. But beneath the cloth, the same hearts are beating. We move closer to one of the ships. The deck creaks softly under sandalled feet. A Templar sergeant stands at the rail, his hands resting on the damp wood. His armour is wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound. His sword is hidden in a chest at his feet, along with rolls of parchment and small bags that clink softly with each tilt of the hull. Gold from Paris, secrets from Jerusalem, all of it heading west into the dark. Look up. The sky above the fleet is wide open now, far from the smoke of any city. The stars burn like 1,000 small fires, cold and clear. The knights have no map for where they're going, but they have this, the night sky, the old compass of shepherds and sailors. On the largest galley near the stern, an older knight in a dark cloak traces a shape in the air with his finger. The North Star, the curve of the Great Bear, the invisible lines that point not just to a direction but to a destiny. The land is not on any chart, he whispers to the younger man beside him, but the pattern is older than any kingdom. We follow the design. He is not speaking only of navigation. Below deck, in the belly of the ship, the cargo is lashed tight. Chests of coin, rolled banners bearing the Red Cross carefully wrapped in linen. A small iron-bound box from the Temple Mount, its hinges dark with age. No one speaks of its contents. No one needs to. Around it, the brothers sleep in shifts, cradled in hammocks that sway with the sea. Some dream of stone vaults and silent chapels. Others dream of the flames that licked at Jacques de Molay's feet. Above all their dreams, the steady creak of the oars continues. Splash. Pull. Days pass. The coast of Europe sinks behind the horizon. The wind freshens, warm and insistent, pushing from the east. The sails are unfurled at last, white cloth swelling like the wings of great seabirds. The oars are drawn up. The sea takes over. The fleet slips into the arms of the trade winds, the invisible rivers of air that blow west, always west across the great ocean. The world the knights knew begins to dissolve. There are no more fishermen on the horizon, no more gulls crying over fields and harbours. The water changes, colour turning from iron grey to a deep, endless blue. The nights grow softer. The air tastes of salt and something else, something wild and unclaimed. On the 7th night a storm finds them. It does not come with a roar, but with a whisper, a shift in the wind, a heaviness in the air. The sea grows restless. Small waves become hills. The sky darkens, swallowing the stars one by one. Rain begins to fall, first as a mist, then as a curtain. The galleys ride the swells, their masts bending like black reeds. The sailors tighten the lines. the knights awaken, gripping whatever they can as the hulls rise and plunge. Listen to the storm, the crack of thunder in the blackness, the snap of canvas whipped by sudden gusts, the deep shuddering boom as a wave slams into the side of a ship. For a moment it feels as if the ocean has decided to finish the work that King Philip began. A younger brother stumbles onto the deck, rain streaming from his hair. He looks out at the chaos, the white teeth of the waves, the ghostly outlines of sister ships vanishing behind veils of spray. In the flash of lightning, he sees something that steals his breath. Not just water, not just storm, but a path. Between the breaking waves there is a strange order. The crests align, forming a corridor of slightly calmer water. At the end of that corridor, where the sky and sea fuse into a single sheet of dark glass, he thinks he sees land. Or perhaps only the echo of land painted in lightning on the underside of the clouds. He blinks. The next flash shows nothing but rain. "Brother!" shouts the captain over the roar. "Below deck, secure the cargo." But the young knight lingers for a moment longer, his heart pounding with more than fear. He has heard the old stories, whispered in cloisters and guardrooms, stories of Avalon, stories of islands that appear only to those in need, stories of harbours that open once in 1,000 years. He closes his eyes. If we are meant to be destroyed, let it be quickly. If we are meant to live, show us the way. The storm rages through the night, but little by little the violence softens. The thunder rolls farther and farther away. The rain eases to a steady patter, then to a fine cold mist. The wind drops, leaving the sails hanging limp and heavy. At last, the sky begins to clear. The clouds tear open in long, ragged ribbons, and the stars look down again, patient and unchanged. The sea is calmer now, but not entirely natural. It feels guided, as if some immense hand has smoothed only a narrow channel through the restlessness. The fleet drifts along that calm strip, their hulls creaking softly, their oars still raised. No one speaks. The men move more quietly now, as if they have stepped into a chapel. The older knight returns to the stern. He looks up at the sky, then down at the dark line of water stretching ahead. "Do you see it?" murmurs the same young brother who watched the storm. The older man nods, almost imperceptibly. "Not with the eyes," he says, "but yes, we are being received." Time becomes hard to measure. The day and night lose their sharp edges. Mist begins to rise from the water, first as a low white smoke hugging the surface of the sea, then as long curling bands that weave between the ships. The world shrinks, the horizon disappears, the fleet moves inside a cocoon of grey. The knights stand at the rails, cloaks beaded with moisture. Droplets hang from ropes and crossbeams like strings of small pearls. Sound becomes muffled, as if someone has laid a gentle hand over the mouth of the world. The only constants are the soft slap of water against the hull and the slow, sure push of the unseen current carrying them forward. One by one the men begin to feel it. They are no longer in the realm of charts and kings. They have crossed a line that no ink has drawn. Some think of Arthur being carried to Avalon after his last battle, the oars of the black barge dipping soundlessly into the water. Some think of Christ asleep in the boat on the stormy sea of Galilee, the waves rising around him until a single word calmed them. Above deck, the mist thickens until the world is nothing but a circle of wet wood and the faint glow of hooded lanterns. Below deck, in the dim hold, a single chest seems to vibrate with a soft inner hum. The iron-bound box from the temple mount, the heart of the order, A brother resting his hand on the lid feels a warmth there, like the warmth of a living thing. "Where are we going?" he whispers, and in the silence that follows, another voice, no one can say whose, replies, "Home." Hours pass, or minutes, or days. Time has become as fluid as the mist. Then, without warning, the fog begins to thin, not all at once, but in layers. The white wall around the ships grows translucent. Shapes emerge, dark smudges at first, then sharper forms. Listen. You can hear something new now, beneath the quiet of the sea. A distant, constant murmur. Not wind, not waves, surf. The sound of water breaking on stone. The mist parts a little more. There, far ahead, rises a shadow. At first, it's only a darker patch against the pale air. Then it takes shape. A curve, a line, a sheer face. Cliffs. High, black cliffs of rock, rising straight up from the ocean like the walls of a vast sleeping fortress. Their tops are crowned with green, a fringe of trees and hanging vines stirred by a wind you cannot yet feel. The fleet slows, more by instinct than by command. Men line the rails, eyes wide, breaths held. Between two enormous pillars of stone you see it, a narrow opening, a gate in the rock. Beyond that gate the water changes colour, deep black giving way to a softer sheltered blue. The sea is calmer there, the surface as smooth as glass. The shape of the cliffs curves inward, forming a circle, a harbour, a sanctuary carved by the hand of time itself. The Templar ships glide toward that opening, their prows cutting through the thinning mist. The air grows warmer. The scent of land reaches them at last. Earth and leaves, the faint sweetness of unseen flowers. On the nearest galley, the older knight closes his eyes. "Avalon," he breathes, not as a question, as a recognition. The anchors are made ready. The sails flutter and fall. The prows point inward, toward the unknown. The ships glide forward, crossing the invisible threshold. And as the first keel passes into the calm, sheltered water of the crater, the world we know grows quiet. The story we have been told all our lives falls away, like an old cloak at a warrior's feet. The fleet has arrived at a harbour no map has ever shown. What happens next belongs to another kind of history. The anchors drop into the turquoise water with a soft splash. The chains rattle down through the iron rings, link by link, until they go taut. The 18 galleys rest at last, rocking gently in the sheltered harbour. Around them, the black cliffs of the volcanic crater rise like the walls of a cathedral. High above, green vines cascade down the stone, and birds you have never seen before wheel in the warm air, calling to one another in strange, bright voices. The knights stand at the rails, silent, staring. This is not Scotland. This is not France. This is not any land they know. One of the younger brothers turns to the captain, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where are we?" The older knight, the one who traced the constellations in the dark, steps forward. He looks up at the cliffs, at the narrow band of sky visible above the crater's rim, and then down at the still water beneath the keel. "We are," he says slowly, "where the maps end." He pauses, and then adds, almost to himself, "and where the dream begins." Now the history books close. The ink on the parchments fades. The voices of the chroniclers, who tell us the Templars died in the fire or vanished into the Scottish glens, fall silent. It is time to dream. Let the mist that shrouded the fleet at La Rochelle thicken. Let the grey waves of the Atlantic roll on for weeks, stretching the world beyond the limits of medieval maps. We are leaving the timeline we know. We are entering the timeline that could have been. What if the fleet did not stop in Scotland? What if the 18 galleys, heavy with the gold of Paris and the secrets of Jerusalem, caught the trade winds that blow west? What if the lost Isle of Avalon was not a metaphor for death, but a geographic reality, a volcanic island rising from the azure deep, hidden by fog and treacherous currents, known only to the navigators of the temple? Imagine the moment of arrival. The year is 1308. The ships glide into a natural harbour formed by the crater of a dormant volcano. The water is turquoise, warm and still. High cliffs of black basalt rise on all sides, a natural fortress that no army could storm. Here, in this secret Atlantic sanctuary, the order does not dissolve. It evolves. They do not hide in caves. They build. You're standing on the docks of Nova Hierosolime, New Jerusalem. But this is not the dusty, contested city of the East. This is a city of white marble and volcanic stone, rising in terraces up the lush green slopes of the island. It is a utopia. The Templars were the master builders of Europe. They built the Gothic cathedrals. Now, unleashed from the restrictions of the Pope and the poverty of the desert, their architecture reaches a terrifying perfection. The city is laid out in a perfect circle, mirroring the sacred geometry of the Temple Mount. Aqueducts of polished stone carry fresh mountain water to every home. Great glass lenses, crafted by secret techniques brought from the East, sit in towers to magnify the starlight, turning the island into an observatory. There are no serfs here. There is no hunger. The vast wealth of the order, the banking fortune that King Philip tried to steal, is not hoarded in vaults. It is circulated. It builds hospitals where medicine is centuries ahead of Europe. While London and Paris are suffering from plague and filth, the citizens of Avalon bathe in heated pools and are treated with herbal antiseptics distilled from the exotic plants of the island. The knights have shed their armour. In this warm climate they wear tunics of white linen. They are no longer warrior monks, they are philosopher kings. They study the scrolls found beneath Solomon's temple, mathematics, astronomy, alchemy. It is the Renaissance, arriving 200 years early. But the world of men is jealous, and the Iron King, Philip of France, has a long reach. In our alternate timeline, the secret does not hold forever. A merchant ship blown off course by a storm spots the white towers of Avalon rising from the sea. The captain returns to France with tales of a city of God in the west. King Philip, now old and sick but consumed by greed, hears the rumour. He does not die in a hunting accident. He lives for one last conquest. He gathers a massive armada, hundreds of heavy French warships, crowded with mercenaries, crossbowmen and siege engines. "Burn the nest," he commands. "Bring me their gold." The French fleet sails west. It takes months. Scurvy and storms thin their ranks, but eventually the lookout spots the island. To the French admiral it looks like an easy kill. He sees the white city shimmering in the sun. He sees no walls. He sees no fleet guarding the harbour. He thinks the Templars have become soft in their paradise. He orders the attack. The French ships form a line of battle, their sails billowing, their decks bristling with steel. They surge toward the harbour mouth. But the Templars are not soft. They have simply changed their weapons. On the cliffs above the harbour, the white-robed knights watch calmly. They do not draw swords. They walk to strange, copper-clad machines mounted on the basalt ramparts. These are not catapults. They are siphons. They possess the secret of Greek fire, the liquid flame of Byzantium, but refined by their alchemists into something far more potent. As the French fleet enters the bottleneck of the harbour, a signal flag drops from the high tower of Avalon. A low hum vibrates through the air. From the copper tubes on the cliffs, jets of liquid fire erupt. They arc through the sky like dragon's breath. Not red, but a blinding chemical blue. The liquid strikes the French sails. It strikes the wooden hulls. It strikes the water itself. And it does not go out. The sea catches fire. Panic seizes the French armada. The ships try to turn, but they are packed too tightly. The fire spreads from rigging to rigging. Men dive into the water, only to find the surface is burning. And then the second weapon is revealed. From the sea caves at the base of the cliffs, the Templar ships emerge. But they're not the old galleys. They're something new. They're small, fast vessels completely enclosed in iron plates, proto-ironclads. They sit low in the water, powered by internal rowing crews protected from the flames. They ram the burning French hulks. They pierce them below the waterline. It is not a battle. It is a massacre. King Philip's Grand Armada is reduced to ash and driftwood in less than an hour. The smoke of the destruction rises into the sky, a black pillar warning the world that the poor knights are poor no longer. The survivors who limp back to Europe do not tell the truth. They are too ashamed. They tell stories of dragons. They tell stories of sorcery. They tell stories of a ghost island that swallows ships whole. And Avalon? The Grand Master realizes that they cannot remain in the open. The world is too savage. If they defeated one fleet, another will come. So, they make the ultimate choice. They choose occultation. They use their science to disappear. They destroy the maps. They set up a perimeter of buoys and watchtowers miles out to sea. Any ship that approaches is turned away by storms, weather manipulation perhaps, or simply terrifying pyrotechnics that make sailors believe the area is cursed. Avalon withdraws from history. It becomes a myth, a legend. While Europe descends into the 100 Years' War, while the Black Death ravages the continents, the lights of Avalon burn bright and steady in the middle of the ocean. They continue to advance. They map the stars. They discover the Americas centuries before Columbus, trading quietly with the indigenous peoples, learning their wisdom, but never conquering. They become the silent watchers of humanity. Occasionally throughout history, they send an emissary back to the old world. A mysterious figure who appears in the courts of Europe, possessing knowledge no one else has. Was Leonardo da Vinci visited by a traveller from the West who showed him drawings of flying machines? Did the founding fathers of revolutions receive quiet funding from a bank that has no name? In this alternate timeline, the Templars did not lose. They won the ultimate victory, the freedom to build a world based on their own ideals, protected by the very ocean that separates the old world from the new. Stand on the cliffs of this imaginary Avalon now. The sun is setting, turning the white city to gold. The air is clean. There is no sound of torture, no clash of armies, just the sound of the sea and the murmur of scholars debating in the gardens below. The fleet that sailed from La Rochelle didn't just escape a king, they escaped this nightmare of history. They found the Grail, and the Grail was simply a place where they could be free. And perhaps, just perhaps, they are still there, hidden behind the fog banks of the Atlantic, watching us, waiting for the day when we are wise enough to find them again. We must leave the dream now. Let the white towers of Avalon fade back into the Atlantic mist. Let the blue fire of the alchemist dissolve into the grey spray of the sea. We are drifting back from the what-if to the what-is. Slowly, the roar of the ocean quiets. The wind dies down. You open your eyes, and you're no longer on the deck of a legendary ship. You are standing in the dim, hallowed silence of an old stone church in Europe. It is quiet here. The air smells of dust and dried flowers. The light filters through stained glass, painting coloured pools on the worn flagstones. Look down at your feet. There, carved from stone, lies a knight. He is an effigy. He wears the chainmail of the 12th century. His hands are clasped in prayer on his chest. His sword is sheathed by his side, and his legs are crossed. This is the only physical trace that remains. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ do not have a country. They do not have a king. All they have are these silent stone sentinels scattered across England, France, and Spain. People walk past them every day. Tourists take pictures. Children run their hands over the cold marble noses. They see only a statue. But you know the story now. You know that this stone shell is hiding a secret. The Templars did not vanish. They dissolved. Like salt in water, they disappeared from sight only to permeate the entire ocean. When the King of France struck them down, he thought he was killing a beast. He did not realize he was smashing a container of mercury. The pieces didn't die. They just scattered, rolled away, and reformed in new shapes. We see them rise again in the Freemasons, the stonemasons who claim to inherit the Templar symbols and the lost word of the temple. We see them in the Order of Christ in Portugal, where the Red Cross simply changed its name and sailed on the caravels of explorers like Vasco da Gama to find new worlds. We see them in the sudden, inexplicable explosion of the Renaissance, where the lost knowledge of the ancients suddenly returned to Europe, bringing light after centuries of dark. Did the survivors of the fleet eventually come back, not as warriors, but as teachers? Did they slowly drip-feed their secrets back into the world when it was safe? The legend says that King Arthur is not dead, but sleeping. Rex quondam, rexque futurus. Perhaps the same is true of the Order. Avalon is not a place you can find with a compass. It is not an island of rock and grass. Avalon is a state of waiting. It is the time between. It is the pause between the setting of the sun and the rising of the moon. It is the secret place where the truth goes when the world becomes too dangerous for it to live in the open. Look at the stone knight one last time. His eyes are open, staring eternally at the ceiling. He looks peaceful. He does not look defeated. He looks like a man who is taking a long rest before a new campaign. The myth tells us that the knights are sleeping beneath the hollow, hills. Deep underground, in a cavern lit by the glow of the Grail, they sit around a table, heads bowed, swords ready. They are waiting for the horn to blow. They are waiting for the moment when the world breaks, when chaos reigns, when the roads are dangerous again, when the innocent have no defenders. Then and only then will the mist part. Then the 18 galleys will rise from the deep. Then the white mantles will return to the road. Until that day, the secret remains safe, buried in the geometry of Rosslyn, hidden in the symbols of a dollar bill, whispered in the legends of a king who never died. The fire of Jacques de Molay burned the body, but it freed the spirit. The Templars are gone. Long live the Templars. As you drift into sleep tonight, let the image of the green hills hold you. The storm is over. The fleet has found its harbour. The treasure is safe. You can rest now. The Guardians are watching, and somewhere, beyond the edge of the map, the lighthouse of Avalon is still burning, a steady star in the dark, waiting for you to find it in your dreams. Thank you for joining us on this journey through a great and epic legend. If these whispered histories have soothed your spirit, You can help other weary souls discover this place of peace by leaving a gentle like and subscribing. Until the next legend calls to you from the mists of time, may your slumber be deep and your dreams be magnificent. Sleep well,